From the Solovox to the DX7 in the Colombian music industry, the influence of the synthesizer on tropical music from the Colombian Caribbean. My name is Carlos Andrés Caballero Parra, PhD in Arts, Master in Learning, Specialist in Post-Production Audio, Bachelor of Music Guitar, Professor, Research, and Record Producer. And with me is Juan Esteban Herrera Sanchez, Magister in Digital Arts, Specialist in Post-Production Audio, Bachelor of Music, Recording Arts, and Music Production, Professor, Research, and Record Producer. The recording industry in Colombia began in 1934 with Antonio Fuentes, who founded the record company Discos Fuentes in Cartagena de Indias. By the way, currently the oldest Latin American label, 90 years. The second record label in Colombia was created by the city of Barranquilla by Emilio Fortu in 1945 and was called Discos Tropical. Both specialized in Colombian tropical music. In 1949, the recording industry in Colombia began to migrate to the city of Medellín with the creation of more record labels in this city. Sonolux in 1949, Silver in 1949 as well, Seida in 1950, Ondina Venus in 1953, and Discos Fuentes in 1954, which decided to move his headquarters to this Andean city. This migration allowed for hybridization between the music of Colombian Caribbean coast and the customs of cultural forms of the country's interior. The discography legacy achieved in these decades has allowed them to preserve their catalogs as a part of Colombian cultural and sonic heritage, and even a large part of Latin Americas. We will focus on two different concepts. The first is the techno-aesthetic concept proposed by French philosopher Gilbert Simondon in his works on the mode of existence of technical objects from 1958. This concept enables us to understand that when talking about an artistic work, it is not necessarily framed with either of these two dimensions, technical or aesthetic. Rather, it is about two consensus dialogue between them. And I quote Simondon here, "Perhaps it is not true that every aesthetic object has technical value, but every technical object has, under a certain aspect, an aesthetic tenor." On the other hand, there are positions regarding to excessive fetishization of technology, which includes the gear acquisition syndrome or GAS, quote, Herbst, Bates, Bennett, according to them, which perpetuated an increasingly narrow understanding of what professional audio technology are, what they are used for, where they come from, and why they are important. This is from Samantha Bennett in 1924. In this case, it is not about mythologizing the Solovox or DX7, which already mythologized enough, but rather understanding their purpose, their use value, and application, which allowed the consolidation of a sonic aesthetic discourse around this music. Thus, we do not aim to create an exaggerated exaltation of musical instruments and audio equipment to avoid falling into a kind of techno-porn obsession with technological objects from the past. One of the purposes of creating electronic keyboards was that they could emulate other instruments. This was the case with the Solovox Hammond, an instrument with particular and simple characteristics. That truly caught the attention of Colombian tropical music examples in the 1960 was its ability to timbrally blend with or even replace the clarinet in its mid-register or the tenor and baritone saxophone in their lower register. Despite this limitation, it also began to replace the accordion in these musical ensembles. In the early 1960s, it was widely used to complement the voices between the electric guitar and the saxophone. Let's listen to an example of its use mm, and a melodic instrument alongside the electric guitar and saxophone in this song called Luna Rosa. Let's hear something about it. Here. The Solovox was naturally replaced with the introduction of the first portable polyphonic electric organs in the late 1960s, such as the Yamaha YC30, which began to replace the role of guitars and Solovox in tropical jazz ensembles of the early 1970s. This instrument not only played melodies but could also perform montuno riff that combined with the Colombian cumbia. This can be heard in La Piragua, performed by the Grupo Los Black Stars in 1969. Let's hear something about
La Piragua, La Piragua, La Piragua.
Following this inclusion came another of this Japanese company's signature organs, the Yamaha Electron EX42, which had more of a spaceship appearance than an organ. This instrument allowed for a multiplicity of registers and timbral combinations and the exploration of effects that began to be used to some tropical music groups, such as the Latin soul and Peruvian chicha group Afro Sound, especially on the album La Danza de los Mirlos. Let's hear something about it.
Hoy.
Here. It could be said that this is the last of the great organs used in Colombian tropical music before giving way to FM synthesis in the 1980s. My partner is continuing from here.
The concept of hybridization, as explored by scholars like Deborah Pacini and Paul Giroux, is essential to understanding the evolution of Caribbean and Colombian tropical music. This process reflects how Black Atlantic communities continually adapt and reinterpret sound practice, deeply intertwined with their cultural identity and expression. The Caribbean, historical a crossroad of cultural exchange, has seen influence from Africa, Europe, and the Americas shape its diverse musical genres, significantly impacting Colombian music, particularly in the development of cumbia, salsa, and other Caribbean fusions. Since the 1970s, genres like Congolese soukous, Haitian compa, Jamaican reggae, and others have made their way to Colombia's Caribbean coast. According to Pacini Hernandez, this process was facilitated by multinational exchange among global South record companies. This exchange, often informal, allowed these sounds to become an integral part of Colombia's dance music scene on the northern coast. A key element in this musical integration was the picot, a mobile sound system that emerged in Colombia's Caribbean working class communities, similar to Jamaican sound system. The picot was fundamental in spreading African and Pan-Caribbean music throughout the region, diversifying the local music scene and inspiring Colombian producers to experiment with new rhythms and sounds. The 1970s also saw Colombia recording industry, particularly Discos Fuentes, recognized this mixture of sounds, leading the projects like Wanda Kenya. Their 1975 album Africa 5000 became a pioneer work in hybridizing the sounds that had reached Colombia's Caribbean coast. This laid groundwork for what later became known as champeta criolla, an Afro-Colombian musical genre that synthesizes and blends the diverse music amplified by the picos. We are going to hear some sample of Wanda Kenya, Africa 5000 from 1975. The 1980s marked an acceleration in this hybridization with the introduction of digital instruments. Artists like Joe Arroyo began incorporating synthesizer and drum machines into their music, blending Pan-Caribbean and African rhythms with salsa and cumbia. Search on archival work of the authors of this presentation, the presence of this synthesizer at Discos Fuentes has been detected since the mid of 1980s. The Yamaha DX7, a pioneer in FM synthesis developed by John Chaunet, played a significant role in shape Arroyo's sounds during this era, evidence in albums like Musa Original from 1986, Echao Pa'lante 1987, and Fuego en mi mente 1988. Let's hear some example of DX7. Another influential instrument was the Casio SK5, an 8-bit sampling keyboard released in 1985. Despite being a toy-like instrument, it became a defining tool in champeta criolla music, thanks to its playful lo-fi sounds and effects. The Casio SK5 allowed producers to experiment with sampling at a time when advanced digital audio tools were scarce in Colombia. The SK5 was used in two main ways: as a studio sampler, adding vocal samples to recordings like the 1994 album Cosima by Rafael Chavez, and as a live performance tool in the picos. This led to the rise of artists who master live sampling, finger drumming, and musical improvisation with the Casio SK5. This is going to see two videos, one from the improvisation of SK5.
Oye, qué perreo.
And then another example from Rafael Chavez, Cosima from 1994, which example the dog sample.
Let's hear it.
These examples illustrate how Colombian music, especially tropical music, has evolved alongside audio technology. The hybridization of technology, music, and territory has expanded the sound palette of performance possibilities, often in unconventional ways. Musicians have embraced a techno-aesthetic approach, blending creativity with technology to redefine Colombian tropical and Caribbean music.
Finally, it is worth highlighting the specific moment when this technology gave rise to the creation of new sonorities and accompanied the aesthetic evolution of the tropical music in Colombia, particularly in the Colombian Caribbean. This was achieved without the need for excessive mythologization of the technological equipment and instruments, but rather by focusing on the process, places, and protagonists that paved the way for this experimental, cultural, and commercial exploration. This exploration allowed for the consolidation of these genres on their preservation in the Colombian sonic imagination. This is the references. Muchas gracias.